Well, hello, builders of good. Thank you for tuning in to the Build Good Fundraising podcast. Fundraising isn't easy, but it should be simple. So in this show, we take the mystery out of raising money. Now, on every episode, we coach you to build your fundraising like a flywheel. The flywheel has 5 steps. Number 1 is always listening to donors so you can understand them. Number 2 is engaging them. Number 3 is asking the right people for the right things. Number 4 is celebrating every gift. And number 5 is reporting back in a real-time and responsive way. If you master the 5 parts of the flywheel, your fundraising flywheel will start to spin reliably with less effort on your part. Your income might grow, so will your career. Now, every week we focus on one part of the flywheel, and today we are focusing on asking. And this is the 2nd episode in our series on new donor acquisition. And for the rest of the series, we are focusing on online donor acquisition, finding new names, new donors, new dollars online. And joining me today is Jeff Giddens from NextAfter. Hey, Jeff, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Great to be here.
New donor acquisition online is one of those, for a lot of shops, it's one of those like wishful thinking magic boxes kind of a thing. They think they're going to turn on some ads, they're going to run some ads, and people are just going to flock to their site and make gifts, and everything will be like golden. Is that how it usually pans out?
Hopefully, but no, it doesn't, right? That sounds pretty idealistic. Yeah, I think that, we've been, I'll say this, I have a unique perspective because I'm a digital native, right? I grew up on computers all the time. I remember starting in fundraising and asking the question, like, why would someone ever respond to a direct mail letter, right? So, and I'm sort of the opposite approach from like a lot of my fundraising heroes who are like dyed-in-the-wool direct mail experts. And I think that there's like, I have some hypotheses around these, especially when you talk about digital, but I think if you think about like acquiring a donor in the first place, I think that's probably like a good place to start is like, why would someone give their money away? One of my kids asked me that one time. They're like, Dad, what do you do for a living? And I was like, fundraising. And they're like, what's fundraising? I'm like, I ask people to give their money away for good causes, And he was like, why would anyone give their money away? Like, didn't even compute to his little 6-year-old brain. I think that what you just mentioned of like just running some ads and people just give their money away. Then I have a hypothesis about this, about why digital is seen as sort of this like easy button that you hit. And I think it's because, the more I've learned about direct mail, the more I love direct mail, because I love psychology and understanding what's happening. But I think that like, if you think about the function of how you acquire donors through the mail, like you send them this letter and then they send you a check back, right? That's like a ridiculously simplified version of what's actually happening. But in digital world, they're like, well, we just start these ads and then they send the money in. They click them and send the money in, right? And that's not at all what happens. But the truth is, that's not at all what happens in direct mail, because someone has to open the letter first off. They have to read the letter. They have to like get engaged by the letter in some way, whether it's like the story or the cause, and if your targeting is good and you've targeted the right people, then they might be interested in that. And then they have to decide to give. Then they have to decide how much to give. My friend Kevin Shulman always says those are 2 different decisions that happen separately. Like, am I going to give and how much am I going to give? And then, they actually have to rip off the reply card, fill it out, write a check, or fill out your credit card info and send it back in, right? And so I think that like that concept of like digital acquisition should just be super easy. We just launch these ads and people just give. Actually like undersells what actually happens in like a direct mail transaction. Like, yes, in both cases, you put something out into the marketplace and it comes back. But, the truth is like no one wakes up wanting to give their money away, and you have to persuade them. There has to be a process. You have to engage them. You have to get their attention. And so I think that, and I know we'll dive into a lot more of this, a little bit later on here, but I think that that's maybe why people perceive it to be so easy is we're just going to go run ads and people will give, right? And the answer is, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you strike gold, I'm in Texas. Maybe I should say you strike oil. Sometimes it happens and you get lucky. Sometimes your targeting is really good or your creative is really good, or people, it's like a earthquake in Haiti and everyone's like kind of primed. All the priming's already happened and they're just like ready to give when you show it. But most of the time, no. That does not happen, Mike. You don't just turn the ads on and the money starts flowing in.
I'm like you, digital native. First job in fundraising, started a Facebook page. At the time, I think it was called a fan page, maybe for the
Oh
organization,
yeah.
and grew it to like 3, 4,000. At the time, that was like crazy, right? And so I go to my boss. I'm like, I don't understand why we're doing direct mail. I just don't understand it. Look, we've got like 3 or 4,000 people following us on Facebook. Why are we spending all this money on the mail? And to his credit, he said, I don't know much about online fundraising, but I'll show you our budget. And so he showed me what we spent on direct mail. And he's like, here's the 6 million we net at the end of the year on direct mail. Do you think you can match that with online? And then if you can, we'll stop sending mail tomorrow. And all of a sudden, like the rubber hit the road for me. And I quickly realized, oh, it's not that easy. There's a whole art form to both of these, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
all right, so we're gonna set the context a little bit here for the rest of the series, which is we are going out to a cold audience here. So everything we're talking about today, we're not talking about running ads to people who know you or maybe even people who are necessarily, have some connection with you, even though they're not a donor. They might be, you might have their email. We're talking about just going to a cold audience,
Yeah.
going out, buying some traffic, giving Zuckerberg a bunch of money, giving the whatever, the people at Google, YouTube, whatever, a bunch of money to run
Yeah.
some ads, pay some ads, go buy some traffic, get in front of some people who might be interested in our cause. Now, you already talked about that there's a lot going on in a direct mail acquisition. It's not as
Mhm.
simple as just getting a letter. And some of the best mail acquisitions have premiums. That means somebody's actually like there's a bit of a perception of value there. Can you can you start with a bit of context in terms of when we're buying traffic, running ads, generally speaking, what is the attitude we should have and what is the mindset? Should we go into this thinking, just want to try to find as many people as possible, or walk us through how you might approach this?
It's great. Great starting point. First off, fundraising is hard because no one wants to give their money away. There's a book I have, actually. Of course, it's never. Oh, yeah, here it is. Bob Hartsook. No one wants to give money away. What a title. It's a great book, too. But I
Great
think you
title.
have to. I think you have to start from that point, right? Because conversion rates are small. Like half the people don't convert. Way more than half the people don't convert. Like a percentage point is like a good response rate sometimes. I don't know why I said that. But most people you show an ad to are not going to give, just like most people you send a direct mail letter to are not going to give. Even in the house file, your response rates aren't 100%. They're not 50%. So I think that's like a good place to start. Is like no one wakes up wanting to give their money away. And so uh, you know, mad respect to direct mail folks, because I think they actually put a lot at stake. They pay a lot of cost up front. With an ad, we can go turn an ad on, spend $200 and figure out some funnel metrics for it, without much risk. But you got to start just realizing that most people aren't going to give, and that giving it, I guess, a corollary of that, if I can, like, if that's the heart's principle, the corollary is that like giving is not a starting point for most people. Like if they don't wake up wanting to give their money away, then that can't really be where you start. And for-profit marketers know this, right? They know that, number one, you got to think about who you're going to show the ad to, and then you got to put yourself in their shoes, right? That's like the hardest thing to do for any marketer is be like, who is my customer? And now I'm going to become them for 10 minutes and think about what they see when they log into the internet or in their Facebook feed or in their Instagram feed or on YouTube channel, whatever. Like, who is that person and what are they interested in, right? And you almost have to look back. We use this concept called the donor mountain all the time. The hard part is like the fundraisers at the peak of the donor mountain. They know within the nonprofit or the agency or wherever, like, like all the good that the organization does, like all the reasons people have told you over the years that they're going to give, all the stuff that their money will actually go do. But the problem is that people at the base of the mountain, or they're even like far from the mountains in general, like they don't know that yet. And so you got to find some way to like get them to the starting point. And asking someone for money, unless you were talking about a cold audience, like unless they're just like a world's most altruistic person, it's just not going to work. Like that's not where people start, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's what we found. We didn't the nonprofit world didn't invent content marketing. I'm trying to think who actually did this. Probably some prototypical version of this in like ancient times. But content, everything with an ad starts with a click, right? There's no interaction unless you start with a click. Now you may run brand ads just to like get your brand awareness out there. Direct mail, people know this. This is why they've done branding like awareness surveys for years, because they want to know, like, if I just send my letter, are people going to be able to know who my organization is? So you may run those sort of ads, but if you're a fundraiser, you're most likely looking for some sort of like direct response metric, which means you're not going to start with just ads with your brand on it. You're going to try to get some journey going, and that journey is going to start with a click. And so I think it's important to think about, like, who is my audience? What do I have that might attract that person to me, just to get that first step, just to get that first click? Like, how am I going to go win that very first click? And the hard thing is that very first question, like, who is my audience, forces us to accept trade-offs. I love the algorithmic age where you can just say, hey, Facebook, here's my offer. Go find people, out of everyone in the US or Canada or the world or wherever, like, go find people who will click this offer. But I think that's kind of spoiled us as marketers, because not everyone is your prospect. And so it really, like, I'd like to think that, for any given nonprofit that anyone would possibly give, but we know that's not true. And so you really have to put yourself in the mindset of, like, who is the type of person who's interested in me? And then what sort of thing do I have that they might be interested in? And so that's where we always start going looking for content, right? Because people don't go online. We say this a lot. We've learned that people don't go online to give. They go online to get. Like, I'm scrolling my Facebook feed because I'm sitting at the doctor's office, or I'm sitting in a line at lunch place or wherever. It's like you're just trying to fill time and be entertained and that sort of thing. So, like, if you're already predisposed to not want to give your money away, you're especially not going to want to do it in this kind of like idle time where you're going to really like fill, you're going to get. And so what do I have that I could give people? I always like to say that, like, the real world equivalent of this is, like, we'll walk into clients' offices and, like, it's always a given that somewhere in the building there's like a credenza with a bunch of like pamphlets on it that no one has touched in years. And so I just go hunting for that credenza. I had a fun one with a client in Virginia about a year ago, and we went on like a content safari, we called it. And we just like went through the building. We're just like, what do you have? People are like, I have this book. We're like, that's amazing. Is there a digital version of that? Or can I scan it in, So you got to start thinking, because I think that there's two sides to that. Who is my audience and what do I have to show them? Well, you may not know your audience, but you may find your audience with the right lead magnet, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's where, like, online advertising has to start, is like, I have a cold audience, which just to say it's everyone, right? But I'm in I run a nonprofit that cares about, let's just say, like, public policy or something like that. Well, our policy wonks, like, create content. They create these papers. Maybe one of these papers would be interesting to the right people if it's about a subject matter, if we're trying to attract that audience, right? So you have to start making that connection.
Yeah. All right. You said a bunch of things I want to unpack. We'll start here. Everything you talked about is the antithesis to what happens in a meeting when when people get together and they say, let's start running some ads. And somebody will say, yeah, let's run some ads. We really just need donors. Like, if donors understood what we do, like, there's no way they wouldn't donate, right? If we can just,
so we like to think, right?
To,
we
like,
just what they do and they'll give.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that, honestly, I think this, like, I remember going overseas, or going to, like, places. There's not a lot of places like this in the US, like maybe like Boulder, Colorado. Pearl Street is, like, famous for having a lot of, like, face-to-face fundraisers, but I always want to, like, take people who say that in meetings, like, all right, go out front on the sidewalk and start asking people who walk by to give. Like, go do that. I have some Austrian friends who have a door-to-door business, and it's like the grittiest thing ever. They've raised for, like, the Red Cross in Austria. I've gone out with their folks. I mean, they're like, no data, except they know who gives. They have an iPad, and they'll sit there and knock. They don't know who's behind the door. They don't know if they're male, female, tall, short, old, young, whatever. And they have to start a conversation. And I'm like, that is gritty. So if you think someone's just going to give if they hear about you, like, think again. So
yeah.
Or you're just ignoring conversion rate data, right? Which is maybe you're insulated from it. So
I volunteered for Canadian Diabetes to knock door to door 3 years ago. I was like, I'm gonna give this a go. I'm a fundraiser. I should know how to do door to door.
Yeah.
I did like 3 streets. Because they start you off small, right? They're like, all right, like, try these 3 streets. And like 2 streets in, I got nothing. And I feel like crap. Like people are just like, they just don't want you there, right? Until I realized, like, I'm doing this wrong. I'm just starting off. I'm like, hey, I'm so and so. I'm volunteering with Canada. It was all about like trying to tell them what I do. So next door, I just like lead with questions, right? And I just like get
Yeah.
them to talk. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh man, the 2 minutes in, that's when I start being like, oh, by the way, I should tell you, like, I'm with Canadian Diabetes. But like by that time, you've got rapport and you've struck up a bit of a relationship.
Yeah. It's how
Um,
you start something, but it doesn't start, if you start, I actually have respect. I was walking into a sporting goods store the other day and I don't know what nonprofit it was, but they had a table set up outside, and this guy's like, hey, do you like kids? It's kind of a weird question, but I have 4 kids. And so I was like, yeah. And I was like, dang it. Like as soon as he said it, I was like, gosh, I just need to go in and get these shoes and come out or whatever.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just think that like anyone who thinks that if we just expose people to our cause, people will give needs to go door to door. In fact, I have an idea, Mike. This may be a bit of a jag, but my Austrian fundraising friends have always wanted to like do some testing around door to door, and not just face to face, but door to door in the U.S., which is small. There's a couple groups that do it. You have to have big brand awareness. They have this whole hypothesis that like small nonprofits, like local nonprofits, could actually do door to door better, but they usually can't afford it. And so this whole hypothesis about a business we could start. But what I want to do is I want to get like you, myself, like a bunch of our like LinkedIn cabal friends to do like a 1 week reality show and go door to door in Dallas and talk about all the things that we learn and all the rejections that we get. And I think it could crush. So you may want to trim that from the podcast. I don't know,
I'm
but
down.
I think it'd be really fun just to be like, let's go do it. We'll find a local cause. Let's test their whole hypothesis. It's a pay per recurring donor model, and you know,
Yeah.
it'd be fun just to hang out, but also just like, let's go get real.
I'm yeah. I'm not trimming that. I'm gonna keep it. This is
All right,
I'm gonna keep it on because we gotta make it happen.
let's go.
Um
We're accepting applications.
yeah. Yeah, if you want to yeah. This is great. You heard it here first, I guess. And I'm
Anyways, back to your point.
yep.
Yeah, like if we just expose people to our cause, they'll give. Doesn't usually work out, right? And you're right. These things start in meetings, right? I think that's one of the hardest things is like I'm just such a big believer in like applied intelligence. So like you have an idea, we'll go try it somewhere, go prototype it and get it out in the wild, get it out of your head and out of the boardroom and into like reality and just go see what happens.
Yep. So what you're basically saying is stop trying to get donors to understand your cause and like start understanding donors. And the way that you framed it is like, well, if you understand donors, donors actually go online to get something. Typically, they don't go to give.
Sure.
Potential donors. You talked about lead magnets a little bit. Let's quickly define it. What is a lead magnet?
Sure.
And what is, you said we all have stuff that somebody might be interested in. For those who are not familiar with content offers, lead magnets, whatever you want to call it, can you just give us a bit of a primer?
Yeah. I mean, we always just define a content offer as like something for which someone would be willing to trade their email address or contact information. But it doesn't even have to be that. It has to be something that, is going to win the click. And, if you look at like, I mean, in the for-profit world, there's like professional lead gen companies, right? That are just out there just churning the marketplace, finding people who are interested in, they're trying to determine whether you like want to buy a house. So then could I take your data and sell it to like a mortgage company and a real estate agent and all these different people, right? And like those folks, like even if you think that business is like scuzzy, like they're amazing marketers, right? Because it's like a low margin business. They got to get people to click because they got to put up the ad money first and then they can sell it. And so I just think that like I don't think I've learned over the last 10 years in spending, a bunch of dollars online trying to figure out what makes people click that a content offer can take several forms, right? A content offer could be a poll, it could be a quiz, it could be a survey. There's kind of 3 different things. Like a poll is like your opinion, a quiz is like test your knowledge, and a survey is like a longer form version of a poll, right? Those are kind of like, or maybe a petition. Those are like I would put those in a category, especially petitions, of like low time investment. People can like give you their opinion really quickly or say, yes, I agree, and sign their name. And also like low donor conversion downstream. There's something happening in the relationship with the donor there where you're not requiring much of them to like get over the transom, and they're not eventually going to return that to you. And I've seen that in the data. Like, that's not my opinion. And then you have stuff like ebooks, which is such a funny term, like ebooks. We're talking about PDF documents, but it's like something you have that's like intellectually interesting to somebody, right? This is why we always say like every nonprofit has content. And if you don't have it, you can create it. You're probably already creating it and you're just not harvesting it in the right way. But ebooks are great for people who are readers or, curious learners. There's a lot of overlap. Like if you look at data with those people giving gifts as well. Then you have things like, online courses, which are like heavy investment time where you might, spend several hours learning about something. We have a couple of clients like seminaries and universities who put their courses online for people and say, hey, you can go build your knowledge in this area. It's obviously a big time investment, but the perceived value is big because of the conversion rates downstream are large. But ultimately, the question that I always like to ask to start this question or start this process in the meeting is this: if I wanted to experience the value proposition of your organization, like how would I do that? Because I think that there's something different. That's a different thing than the first question you asked, which is like, as long as we just tell people about our organization, they'll want to give, right? It's like, no, people have to experience it in some way. They have to experience not your organization, they have to experience like the value you have. Those are two different things. So if I'm going to experience it, how would I experience it? We were working with a seminary here in Dallas several years ago, and they had all these donors that they'd gotten through direct mail who like never set foot on their campus. They just kind of maybe knew some of the graduates or agreed with them theologically. And, when we wanted to go out and do digital ads, we knew that we had to give people some way to experience the value of this seminary. And they were like, well, we have this course. It's ugly, but we filmed it. We filmed it like when one of our buildings was undergoing construction. We couldn't use the classroom just to kind of like let people do distance learning, And so we used it, and, 8 years later, they have 1 million people who have signed up for their online courses. And it's like totally transformed their organization because all of a sudden people got to experience it. It was formerly limited to just students who were experiencing that, and they opened that up. And now all these people have experienced it and want to give. So I think that a content offer or a lead magnet has to have a functional part to it. It's got to get someone to click and it's got to get someone to want to click and want to come to your landing page and maybe sign up for it. And then if they sign up for it, maybe give right away, maybe give downstream. But ultimately, it's got to be something that like people, that your target audience, whether you know how to define that or not, is going to see of value. The second leg to that is that it's also got to relate to what you do. Like you could go give away free stuff all day that has nothing to do with your nonprofit, and you're not going to turn those people into donors because like there's got to be something about it that identifies them as someone who might care about what you do. But they don't have to be ready to give, right? That's the difference in the perception versus reality. That like, oh, this person is going to see our cause and they'll be ready to give. No, that's not how any relationship works. You don't meet someone and like want to get married. You meet and you like learn one fact about him. You're like, that's interesting. Learn another fact about him. You're like, that's interesting. And then you grow in relationship. And then, maybe one day decide to be better friends or whatever it is. So, lead magnet is just trying to get that click. I use those terms interchangeably. A magnet because it's attractive to people, right? But also a content offer just because it's giving them something of value because there's a value exchange happening. And if you want to get their email address or their phone number in order to communicate with them downstream, you've got to give them something that's worth trading that.
Right. Right. So step one is realizing, hey, donors don't just go online, just give their money away. They actually go online to give. Step two is being like, all right, what do we have to give? Doing an inventory of all the things that you already have or things that you could create that might be interesting to donors, that relate to your mission, that allow donors to like closes the gap between what you do and the donor experience a little bit, gives them a little bit of a taste of what your cause or your mission, the outcome of that maybe. Step three, okay, we've got something. Step three is to then build some sort of funnel. Is that what we do next?
I think the funnel is going to build itself, right? Because like unless your ad is the actual donation form, which I've never seen. Maybe I should actually try that. Like it's going to be multiple steps, and at any step of any interaction, people are going to fall away. With direct mail, like we don't know what our open rate is. Like a lot of the funnel steps are actually like obscured from us. But in digital, it's all mapped. You click through rate. Let's use like an ebook offer, right? So you put an ebook ad together, and maybe you have like 2 or 3 ads. You should, because you shouldn't assume you're going to get it right. And you put them out there, and you're like, which ones are people clicking? And then after people click those ads, they come to a landing page, and it says, hey, into your, if you're interested in this subject, we've got this expert who's written this opinion piece, and we want you to download it. It's free. You just give us your first, last email, and a good conversion rate might be like 60%, right? So fewer people than the amount of people who click are going to convert. And then after that, we found we've got a lot of stuff of this on our site about like how to build what we call an instant donation page. So what we've realized is like it doesn't have to be like just plain lead gen. A lot of people will give right away. It kind of compresses the funnel, like it's a really short interaction, but they'll make a gift if they're the right person. And that's actually a really good indicator of future donor behavior. And so after that, it's like, hey, thanks for downloading that. Let me tell you why we give that away. We give that away because it's part of our mission, helps people learn about what we do. If you want to, if you're interested in this and like would like to support it, here you go. And maybe 2 to 3% of people will give right there. So it is this funnel. The cool thing is once you get some kind of like baseline metrics there, like that's when optimization really kicks in, which is like what I care about the most, of saying, hey, man, how do we get more people to sign up? How can we test this landing page? And then how do we get our instant conversion rate to go up? You kind of get all those metrics in place, and then you have something. Or maybe you have nothing. I think sometimes it's underrated. Like we launch a lot of content offers that fail. They just don't work. Like there's either not a market for them, or the ad's not appealing enough, or it's not turning into donors. And so I think that the trick is like you got to get something out there and try it.
Yeah. I want to back up for a second before we get to the ads and buying the traffic, building this thing. So sounds like we want 2 pages. One landing page at the front end, which has our, maybe the cover of the ebook, and it's got a headline, subheadline, and a value prop, like what's in the ebook. Maybe 3 bullet points of teasers. Like in this ebook, you'll find how to do this, page 3, how to do that, page 17.
Yeah.
The number 1 reason why people do this, page whatever. Like
here's a 5-star review someone gave this ebook. You'll want it. Trust me, it's from someone you trust.
Right. Yeah. And all you have to do to get it is, first name, email, done. Get my ebook. They click the button. Now they land on commercial marketers have all these awesome terms that sound like really bad when applied to fundraising, like a self-liquidating offer or like an OTO, like a one-time order form bump. But instant donation page is such a better way of talking about it. So now they land on this instant donation page in the stuff that you run an agency, I run an agency. Our aim is often to cover ad spend when we do anything with these kinds of things. I don't know how realistic that is for some nonprofits, but that's like they get a chance to make it.
Why is that though? Like why nobody does not like nets money on acquisition unless you just hit the jackpot. It's like, why do we think it's different in digital? Why do you think it's like, oh, we got to cover our costs? It's like, I think a 0.5 ROI is pretty special on a new donor acquisition package anywhere. I know lots of people who would like, love to get those sort of numbers.
Yeah, there is a weird, people have all accepted that you're going to lose money in direct mail acquisition, and that's okay.
Except in digital. Yeah, right.
They just have, like, that's just a thing. But in digital, somehow it's like, if we could just break even on that funnel, that would be really, then we can scale that up.
It's funny, right? We have this like there's got to be a phrase, maybe we can coin the phrase. It's like it's like a prism you see through, right? Where you look at it one way, of course you're going to lose money in acquisition. Then all of a sudden you like slightly turn. It's like, no, you better make money right away, or everything, everything changes. So
it's like a digital fundraising derangement syndrome or something.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, we should break that down.
Yeah. All right. So they land on instant donation page. This offer, the offer to give, does that have to relate to the resource a little bit? You have to kind of make a pivot from, the resource is on its way to you, and then kind of pivot to an ask, or very practically and tactically walk us through how you might do that.
Honestly, it's probably like the biggest drop off, right? We have a couple of experiments in our library that show, like, in the headline of this instant donation page, like the words you use can make people think that the process is done. Like if you say congratulations or thank you, we've done it, like people's brains turn off. Like if you take that out, more people will engage with your content, right? So you've got to get people, they've just gotten the thing that they wanted and they may not have it yet. Maybe it's going to come to their inbox or maybe they ordered it, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to find a way. It's like I love this because it's like the crucible. It's like the hardest part is like, how do I get someone to read the rest of this content? Because I just delivered them what I want, right? And so you got to make some sort of mental shift there of saying, hey, like I was advertising you this thing and now I've given you that thing and that thing is being delivered, but let me tell you more about why I gave you that thing. So sometimes it can reference the thing itself, the offer. Honestly, the first funnel I ever ran, this is a long time ago, was an ebook, and the donation page was just really an ask to get the hard copy of the book for a donation of $50 or more. It's like same book. And it like blows your mind. It's like, I just gave this person a free digital version of this. Why would they want the hardcover? It's because like people like reading books. I like reading books. And it's something they can get for a gift. And they are motivated if you've qualified your audience correctly, right? So sometimes it's like, you got to explain why you just gave them that thing. But ultimately, you shouldn't be using any content offer that doesn't relate to your mission. And that's what you got to try to get them to, right? And maybe it's not the whole mission. Maybe it's like a project or just one piece of it. It doesn't have to like, yes, you want to walk away with a transaction. You want someone to give right then, but it doesn't have to like, they don't have to understand everything about you, but they really got to understand why does this thing that I'm attracted to, why does it even make sense for me to consider giving at this point? Like, is there need? Is there something else happening here? You know, and what we found is like one effective way to do that is explain why you're giving this offer away.
Yeah.
And, you know, let them know, yeah, it's free, no strings attached. But if you'd like to give and help more people experience this offer, there's one value proposition we've seen work, which is like, hey, your gift helps us create free resources like this and give them away. So maybe, you know, for some groups, like it's actually like funding your acquisition budget. The donor wouldn't think about it like that, right? But it's actually like the content distribution is actually the first step of giving that they give to, and then they learn more about it. But yeah, you do have to make that transition. Like you click the ad, you got to the landing page, you got the offer itself, and now I've got to get you to give. And that's really where the drop off happens. You see like a 50% conversion rate go to like 2%. But that's where like the fun work really begins. So.
Yep. Yeah, I went through a funnel the other day for a not for a nonprofit, for some sort of sales framework. And I think after the download, like the confirmation page, I think I went through like 5 more pages. And the
Yeah.
headline was always like, "You're almost done." And then it was like a little bit more. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that too." And the next one was like, "All right, yes. Oh, one more thing." I was like, "Okay, yeah, that too." And they just like kept stringing me along. And it was never like it's on
there's
its
some
way. Yeah.
genius copywriting. I mean, I've seen stuff for like gold bars, you know, where they have these landing pages that have like 50,000 words and 40-minute videos. And it's like someone's doing this thing. They wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work, you know? So it is really fascinating, like what goes into that, where it's called like a mental conversation, right? Because you're actually speaking to someone, they're reading it in their own voice on a landing page, but you're also trying to get their mind to move from like, I wanted this free thing to now I'm actually going to give you my money away and may not get anything in return. You know, that's a really hard chasm to bridge.
Yeah. So this is where the kind of the copywriter nerdery comes in, or the human psychology nerdery of like, you know, asking questions in your copy so they get a
Yeah.
head nod from somebody, right?
Yeah.
And like they feel like they're having a conversation with you because you're asking a question and answering it. And
Yeah.
there's all
I,
sorts of things you can try here for sure. That's a whole other podcast episode. All right, we've got the offer, we've got
yeah.
instant donation page. Now we got to go out and buy some traffic. We got to get some people to it.
Yeah.
This trips a lot of people up for a few reasons. I think like Facebook wants you to spend a lot of money with them, but they don't make it all that easy with their changes to business manager and meta ads manager and everything. And some people just like the technical end of it trips people up sometimes.
Sure.
But there's options. You can go Facebook. You can go paid search. You can go YouTube ads. You can do LinkedIn ads. There's all sorts of options. Where would you start? So our audience is mainly small and medium-sized shops.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing that is people may see social networks as like all various variations of like the same thing, but they're really different. Twitter is like a content distribution social network, right? Like it's like links and clicks and information. Facebook is like entertainment. Google, there's like multiple parts of Google. There's like the search part, which is like people got to be looking for what you have, right? There's also like YouTube, which is like if you have a video asset about your offer, it could be very effective, help you find the right market. Google knows a lot about like intent. They take all your search intent and say like, oh, you're in market for these sorts of things. They also just launched like demand gen ads, which are basically like Facebook ads in their feeds. So there's some promise there. But I honestly think like for all no matter what you think of Zuckerberg or whatever, like Facebook's probably the best way to start. I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, I do think you can get overwhelmed by their technicality of like the ad platform, but they really do try to make it simple for you. The Advantage Plus stuff they've been rolling out over the last couple of months has made it like easy just to get going. The hard part about Facebook is that like they kind of assume that everyone just wants to do brand advertising and they're not really like geared towards direct response. So there's a couple like decisions you got to make is like, what do I really want from this? Do I want emails or do I really want people to donate, right? And you got to like configure your pixel to fire when you get a donation and optimize for the right things. But I really do think that like if I had $500 and I had to go like just try to figure out if I could get someone to give, Facebook would be my first go-to because it's got a huge audience. People are on there. It also encompasses Instagram. And so you can kind of kill two birds with one stone there. And then the algorithm is really good at finding people who are going to click, for lack of a better word, they've got it tuned up. I think that's probably where I would go. It used to be the attractive thing about Facebook was you could go like plug in all of these interests, right? Of like, I want people who like dogs or cats or, trees or whatever it is. And now like every time Zuckerberg gets called before Congress, like those options go away. But the truth is like they still have all of that data, right? Like you don't need to be able to select those things. They know, like, trust me, they'll scan your landing page copy and figure out what your offer is so they can show it to the right people. They still know that like back in 2009, you said, I like, the Chicago Cubs or whatever. So they know they have all that data, but they're just not revealing it to the marketplace. And honestly, like those Advantage Plus ads, which have no targeting, are some of our best performing campaigns right now. I think that if you have little information and little expertise, Facebook does make it easy to go launch a campaign. That said, like it's not necessarily easy, right? Your content offer may not be that good. You may learn a lot of stuff, but I think that's the most important thing is like approaching it with a learning mindset and saying, what can I go? I'm going to go buy some traffic. I'm going to try to get people into this funnel, understand what my metrics are, and then understand how I can, test and optimize to get it to work better.
Yep. Just to pick on two things you said there. Number one is you got to know what you want. Facebook needs to know whether, hey, am I going to try to find a lot of people who are going to just like see the ad or land on the page or make the gift. So what you said is you want the pixel to be on the page where they make the gift. So they've made the gift, the confirmation page. Tell Facebook, go and check there. People who went all the way through there and then made a gift. Those are more of the kind of people that I want.
Yeah. And Facebook's good at optimizing for that. Once it realizes like, oh, we got Mike. The important thing to know is like, if you talk to like people at Facebook, they talk about clickers, right? Because that's like a known finite audience. Like they know who clicks ads. And so if you tell them you want clicks, they'll show it to the clickers. But if you tell them like, I want someone who's actually going to trigger the purchase event for my pixel, as soon as they get someone to do that, like they're really good. The algorithm, at least, is really good at going and finding more people like that. You don't have to give it all the data. It'll just find out if you can get someone to say yes. Yep. So
the second thing you mentioned is what Facebook is doing now, which is like zero targeting. Like you just tell Facebook, go find the people. And you let it run. Remember, you're in control of how much you spend. So you can always start small and scale up if you're afraid of just giving thousands of dollars to an algorithm. You can start small.
You can have success at like $50 a day.
Yep.
I mean, maybe that's a lot. For some people, it is a lot of money. You shouldn't take it for granted, but it's like you can go out and you don't have to go have a huge ad budget. That's I think Facebook's actually democratized ad buying in a really good way.
Yep. All right, then lastly, we've got this thing running. We're putting some money on it. Now it's time to look at the metrics and start optimizing. I'm going to use an example of round numbers here and an example where there's some optimizing to do. So let's say we're spending money with Meta, with Facebook, and let's say like the cost per lead is like $3. Or yeah, let's start with $3.
Yeah.
And that's the cost per lead. So as in every email you've acquired, you've paid $3 for.
Yep.
And let's say the conversion on the back end is like 0.1%.
Okay.
So now you know, okay, so those are the numbers I'm working with. Now you can actually like kind of model out if it stays like this, how much do I have to spend? You know, if I spend this much, how many donors will I get? If I spend that much, how many donors will I get? So that's the first thing you can model out. But the second thing you can do is you can start optimizing to actually getting those numbers to be a lot better. So
Yeah.
yeah, walk us through how we can do that.
I mean, I'm happy to share these actual numbers. We have like a dashboard that pulls in all the Facebook metrics and marries it with the email metrics, acquisition metrics, and marries it with the donor acquisition metrics, so we can see the full funnel, right? But if you're giving me those numbers, I would say like first off, $3 is like kind of our ceiling for like a good offer. Not that you couldn't pay more. Sometimes you'll pay $5 for a name, but you get a lot more donors, right? And they're more qualified. But like I would say like that's a pretty good cost per lead. A 0.1% instant conversion rate is really bad, right? It's going to be very expensive to actually get a donor. And you can just do the math. That's the wonderful thing about a funnel is it's just, hey, this much here, I get this many. And if this percentage convert, then take it all the way back to the cost. And like, this is how much it's going to cost me. So operative metrics, I think click-through rate's really important and probably underrated. I think we look as direct response, we look bottom of the funnel, but if people don't click your ads, like they can't even enter the funnel. So click-through rate, landing page sign-up rate, your cost divided by landing page sign-up rate is your cost per email, right? And then that instant conversion rate, we look at like gross cost per donor and then ROI as well. But the biggest question is like, okay, I have these funnel metrics. Where am I going to run a test? And I say that click-through rate's underrated sometimes because like everyone wants to run a donation page test, which like I got people, I got 2 people to give on the control. I got 20 people to give on the treatment. Wow, I just, 10x our conversion rate, right? But the hard thing is like if you're not getting enough traffic at the top of your funnel, you're never going to get enough donations. And so like everything runs downward from that. So I would say, I want to get a 1% click-through rate. If you don't have a 1% click-through rate, it's going to be really hard to do anything else. So if your click-through rate is under 1%, then you need to run an ad test and maybe try some different audiences. If you're doing the Advantage Plus and it's just wide open, that's honestly helpful because it like gives you one less thing to focus on. It's hard to put your trust in the algorithm, I guess. But if you're not getting a 1% click-through rate, it's not impossible. I have plenty of campaigns running for years that don't get a 1% click-through rate because they're so good at converting. But 1% click-through rate is a good target. I would say like a 30% landing page conversion rate, right? If you're below 30% of people who hit your landing page and sign up for the offer, it's just going to be really hard to get enough people to give to make it worth your while, right? So 30% on the landing page. And then on the instant donor conversion rate, it really does vary based on how much people give, but I would say you want a 2.5% instant conversion rate is a great starting point. If you do that, I'm not saying your campaign will be like gangbusters, scale it, to infinity and beyond, but I think that's like a really good starting place just to have something to go for, right? Which is like, do I get a 1% click-through rate? Do I get at least a 30% landing page conversion rate? And then do 2.5% of the people who sign up for that make a gift? That gives you something you can start working with.
Yeah. So if you're not at 1% click-through rate, you can okay, I start testing out with different ads. Maybe I just got it wrong. Let's throw a few different variations at it. So you get to 1%. Great. If you're not getting a 30% conversion rate on the landing page, maybe your offer is not good, or what you're offering isn't all that great, or just the way you talk about it isn't all that great. So
Yeah.
the easiest place to start is just change the way you
Maybe
talk
they don't
about
agree,
it.
right? Maybe the landing page is not fulfilling the promise of the ad, right? There's not like congruency or continuity between those two things.
Yeah.
So sometimes, we've tested even things like the color of the ad matching the color of the landing page. It doesn't always work, but it really helps people understand am I getting what I thought I was going to get from the click.
Yeah. And then if you've got that at 30% or higher, now the instant donation page, and you're not getting up to that 2.5%, things you can do here. You can try introducing a match. We've tried that before.
Yeah.
You
Try
can
a
try.
premium, like
Yep.
something you can get. Sometimes that probably has more of an effect on average gift than it does on conversion rate. But I think the other thing to think about, I said this at the beginning, is like different offers have different conversion rates. Like if I was running a petition and I got like a 2.5% donation conversion rate, I would be ecstatic, right? Because that usually doesn't happen in like petition world. You're usually talking about like a 0.5% conversion rate, which could work. If you're running something high value, like a free hard copy of something that you're sending somebody, you should have you should have a stronger than 2.5% donor conversion rate, maybe like 8 or 10%, because you've just committed to give someone physical in the real world, not just digital. So I think that's important to remember, is like 2.5% is an average, but like your content offer, what you're promoting, there's a wide range within that.
All right, we've got those metrics. Things are running. We're going to start buying a little bit more traffic. We're comfortable spending more money. Everything is working great. We're going to amp it up a little bit. And then you go, well, this is working great. Should we try creating new content offers? Should we just like release a bunch of trains, a bunch of funnels into the world here? Just let them go and let them
Yeah.
run. How long do we let a content offer run? Just as long as it's performing. But when do we start introducing more content offers to maybe reach a different audience that didn't resonate with the first one?
Yeah, it's great. So we're onboarding a new client this month, and I always like to start with like 2 or 3. The reason is I want something to compare it to, right? I want to be able to like have we call it like a diversified portfolio, like your 401k or whatever, right? Like I want to know, if you put one content offer out there, it's hard to know, like, is this good for us, right? But putting 2 or 3 out there can help. I think that sometimes because they can be easier to manage at scale. Like we think we need to launch and keep running a bunch of content offers, but you'd never do that in the mail, right? Like that's way too much to manage. I mean, it's nuts. I have clients who want to spend a lot of money in acquisition. They have the budgets to do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should be running 20 content offers. That's like almost too much to manage, right? Like if you're thinking about all of the factors that go into that, of like spend in each offer and audience for each offer and making sure that all your funnel metrics are aligned, it's really tough. And so I think that like you should try to get something else out in the marketplace so that if your original content offer is doing well. We had a client who was acquiring donors for like a little over $100 a pop, and we launched this offer for them, and like all of a sudden they're acquiring donors for $20 a pop. And we thought the first offer was good. It was like maybe the 10th total offer we had launched for them. It was the best performing one. It was our control, right? But we didn't know until we got the next one that it was actually possible to acquire donors for $20 gross. So sometimes like you got to get something else out there. I have content offers that have run for 10 years. I know groups that are famous, like especially like missionary groups or World Relief Books, groups that have done like a hard copy book, which is like a 150-page appeal letter, and they've had that control for like forever. It seems like 20 years. So if something is like not time bound or like doesn't lose relevancy, I love what I call evergreen offers. Like you can use them at any time of year. You think about something like it's January, right? So like Lent is coming up, and people may have like Lent devotionals or whatever that they use. That's great, but you have a limited amount of time you can use that. I'd rather find something that you could use all the time, But I
Right.
think the question about should I launch another one really has to do with, number one, is your first one performing at the metrics that are acceptable to you, at or above? If not, I would keep focusing on that one. But also, like, it's good to get something else in the marketplace so you have something to compare it to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is another one because digital is so like you could create a content offer easily and just get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
People think, oh, we should have like 10 of these out. Let's just see what works. And again, in direct mail, you wouldn't expect that. You have like your control, and then every time you run one other one against the control to see if you can
Yeah.
start beating the control. But imagine having a control and sending 10 other versions out at the same time to try to beat the control.
I'll also
It would
say
be
this too, like, if it depends on how you set up your campaigns, but like it could confuse the Facebook algorithm if you're trying to get the algorithm is smart, but it's not like sentient. People may disagree with me on that. But it's like if you send it in too many directions at once, you just lower your chance of actually finding something that works, right?
Yeah.
So.
All right. Thanks for spending some time with us today, walking through this sort of approach, the content offer approach, thinking about what a donor might want when they go online. So just to recap, you're going to think about, hey, what do we have to give instead of thinking about what can we get from somebody? What do we have to give? What can we?
Yeah, the first step is to get someone to care. If you get someone to care, right? You don't start by caring about this cause that you don't know anything about. You start by caring about something that you want. That's the unfortunate reality, right? Is like they just have to care enough to click the ad.
What might someone care about? Number 2, take an inventory of the stuff you have. See if something fits. If not, what can you create? Number 3, build a landing page, build an instant donation page. Number 4, go and buy some traffic, run some ads against it. Number 5, start optimizing. Jeff, that's all the time we have today. If people want to know more, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to nextafter.com. If you want to go run like ad experiments and don't know how to run a test, like we've got thousands of advertising experiments there just published for free on our site. But yeah, nextafter.com. And if you're a nonprofit, fundraising junkie like we are, you should come to the NEO Summit, which is in September this year, and you can go find more about that at neosummit.com. That's niosummit.com. Mike, you came because I offered to drive you to the
airport
if you guys were able to adopt somebody. And so it's a fun time. It's like all your friends are there, and it's really great.
Yeah, we'll be back there. So if you go to NEO Summit this year, you're gonna see Jeff, you're gonna see our team. It's gonna be a good time.
Well, high five.
That's all for today. Here's my short action plan for you if you have never done this sort of a thing. Today, take some time, think about what might somebody care about. What might a potential donor care about? What do we have? What content inventory do we have? Find the credenza. See what you've got lying around. Resources that you might take for granted. Maybe even stuff that you're using in your programming. Maybe even if you're college, maybe even you've got like chapters of books, or somebody wrote a book, you can give away the book or a chapter or two, or you got courses, something like that. What content do we have that somebody might care about? Start there. That's my action plan for you today. As always, thank you for hanging out with us around the fundraising campfire. If you want to be part of an elite group of people who has a BuildGood mug, right now we're doing this thing where I will ship a mug to your door if you rate and review this podcast. It's all the things. It is small batch, handcrafted by artisans, free range, whatever you want to. That's my content offer for you. A beautiful camping enamel mug. I'll ship it to your door. Just review the podcast. Send me your review because you're going to use some sort of pseudonym online. The other day, somebody reviewed it. It was like Coolboy99.
High school username, right?
Yeah.
What was yours, by the way?
You've got me on the spot. I don't know what it is.
So my first username, I shared an email address with my dad.
Yeah.
My name's Jeff. His name's Steve. So it was JEFSTE, JeffSteve@AOL.com. That was it. I don't use it anymore though. So
yeah. So send me a screenshot, just at hello@buildgood.com, or like DM me on LinkedIn and tell me your address. That's my content offer. This is my funnel. You're in my funnel. Do that. I'll ship you a mug, and that way, every now and again, you'll also hear from me when we've got cool things happening. If you're listening to this, you're my kind of people. I'm your kind of people. Thank you for the work you do. I'm your host, Mike Dirksen, cheering you on as you do good in the world.